The city has a zero tolerance policy. Is it working? I don't think the status quo is working. We've told people where they can't stay, and we have not told people where they can stay. We have not provided the resources for people to get into housing. And so the result is we have encampments in neighborhoods.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
So I'm going to talk to 5 candidates this week. So Soren Stevenson, bear with me.
You have said you don't like talking to candidates.
Oh, that is true. Because you're all saying a lot of the same stuff. You're on your talking points.
Yeah.
Like you're worried about saying the wrong thing. It's a recipe for an extremely boring conversation, don't you think?
It is, yeah. Well, I prepped some things to try and be a little less boring, spice it up a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Another thing, will you participate in an ad here at the beginning with me?
Only if it's for something ridiculous.
Okay, it's for Wedge Live. Listeners, this is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards, and you need to go to patreon.com/Wedge Live and give what you can, because there are no paywalls. You don't pay money to listen to this podcast. And as I just told Soren Stevenson, candidate for City Council in Ward 8, this is a slog for me. These people are so boring, not interesting to talk to, and I'm doing it for you, the listener, so you know just on what basis to make your decision as we head into caucus season on April 8th. Soren Stevenson, do you agree with me? Should people go to patreon.com/Wedge Live and support me?
People should most definitely go to patreon.com/Wedge Live to sign up to make sure that this public service continues. We can continue to get close to British humor in the Wedge and greater Minneapolis, or greater Wedge area, probably is how you phrase it.
Would you characterize my humor as British?
I said near.
Near.
You know, it's kind of like flat, like a deadpan.
Oh, okay. Well, I like that. I'll take that characterization. Humor that no one understands, but if you take the time to appreciate it, actually is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for doing an ad for me here at the beginning. There will be no ads for Soren Stevenson. We're not sending people to your donate page. We're not doing that.
It does exist. It does exist.
Let's get started, Soren Stevenson. Well, let's take the temperature of Ward 8. This is your second go-round here. Mm-hmm. You ran in 2023. It was just as razor thin as it can get, the kind of thing that you have nightmares about in the years that follow. So taking the temperature of Ward 8, what are the top 3 issues you're hearing from people as you go around the neighborhood?
Yeah, well, by far and away, the top is the crisis of homelessness on our streets and the crisis of affordable housing just for everyday folks. Next would be, we still don't have a comprehensive public safety system that keeps everyone safe, and where when you come in contact with that system, everyone can expect to be treated with dignity and respect. And then climate change is ever present. It affects us in terms of livability. Our quality of life is intimately tied to the climate and what we're doing to the planet. And so these are 3 things that Ward 8, that Minneapolis, we have to be laser focused on. So those are 3 things I'm laser focused on.
I feel a kinship with Ward 8. I feel like there's a special relationship between Ward 10 and Ward 8. Very, very similar places. I always have a good time with the people of Ward 8. A lot of friends there.
There are a lot of, I mean, going about and having met, thousands of them at this point, there are a lot of powerful people in Ward 8. There's all kinds of people that do stuff like leaders of unions and people that were on Kamala Harris's inner circle. And,
right.
There's just like, wow, all of you have packed into this small area in central South Minneapolis. It's incredible.
Right. Lots of political activism and talent and people with the capacity to spend a lot of time trying to make a change in the world. David Brower is a Ward 8 resident.
David Brower, amongst many others. Angela Connolly, Ward 8 resident.
Oh, I didn't even realize Angela Connolly's district was in Ward 8.
It is only in Minneapolis. It's only South Minneapolis. So, yeah, it is Ward 8.
Okay. What did you learn last time around? We mentioned you came up just barely short. Like that experience is helpful. What are you going to do differently this time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, there's a few, boring campaign things that I'll do differently, but one thing that is not going to change is presenting, a strong vision of where we want to go in the future. But what does need to change is basically who we get to talk to. You learn pretty quick in a campaign that it's pretty hard to get into apartments. It's pretty hard to get into non-English speaking communities if you don't speak that language. And so there's certain things around that are tweaking what we're doing, but it'd be a little boring to get into the nitty-gritty of all that campaign stuff.
It sounds like you don't want to reveal secrets to your opponent. You don't want to give tips and tricks.
That's not entirely wrong, but also I can tell you it's very boring. Campaigning is not sexy work.
So what is your driving issue? I imagine it's still that you got shot in the face and lost an eye and are committed to making a difference on public safety and policing in the city.
Mm-hmm. That's certainly true. I wake up every morning and I wipe blood out of my eye. That is a true story. And so, there's no getting past this. There's no saying that the harms, the trauma that happened to me and that happened to other people didn't happen or are just going to completely disappear. And so in Ward 8, we have George Floyd Square, almost all of George Floyd Square in Ward 8. And so this is something that our neighbors are not just getting over. We're not just moving on from this thing. This is something that we live with and that we're going to have to just piece into the narrative of our lives, the narrative of our neighborhoods. And we have to do it in a way that's honoring to the people who have come before us and also honoring to people that come after us who don't get killed by police, don't get brutalized by police, while also, being safe. So that's one. The other is that I'm a street outreach worker, a homeless outreach worker. I work directly with people who are sleeping on the streets. I go out and try and connect people to housing and services, resources, that sort of thing. And it's a crisis. I see every day the way that the city is instead of being a partner in getting people up off the street, the city is going against that. And so, yeah, these are the things that really motivate me. They're the things that I have direct personal experience with, and they're what bring me back.
So when we talked before in 2023 for that campaign on this podcast, I think I remarked about how you don't let resentment bleed into your politics or the way you are as a person, and that could easily have been the case. And so a related question, you're going to be council member, there are going to be times when you have to deal with police and the Minneapolis Police Department. And what do you say to people who are concerned? Well, you will inevitably be biased against the police. You won't be able to deal with them in a reasonable way because of your personal experience with them. How will you handle that part of the job?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of this is just an understanding of professionality, and another is, I understand what it's like to be human and to be someone who has been traumatized by violence. And oftentimes, a lot of cops are people who have been traumatized by violence or by witnessing violence. And so we have shared humanity. We can connect on our shared humanity. And it would be pretty upsetting for me to do a ride along with the officer that shot me, who still is on MPD. But it's not his uniform that had him shoot me. It's the structure of accountability or lack thereof and his own actions. And so this isn't, like if someone experiences trauma from somebody that, with blonde hair, you don't go, okay, everyone with blonde hair. No. You got to move forward. You got to figure out how to act and how to live. And so we're both human. We can connect on our humanity. That's the first place.
I was surprised. So I spoke to your opponent. I think you only have one opponent, Josh Bassett, this week, I think. No, maybe it was last week. It's all running together, Soren Stevenson. But I was surprised how willing he was kind of open about the ways we need to go in a different direction than Andrea Jenkins. It's not as though he was cheerleading Andrea Jenkins' performance over the last 4 to 8 years. I think he's ultimately probably going to be supported by Andrea Jenkins. I'm making an assumption here, but that's my inclination. So my question to you is, how are you going to be, I asked him a similar one, but how are you going to be different from Andrea Jenkins?
There's ways that will be similar and ways that will be different. I've talked a lot, in the last campaign in particular, talked a lot about certain values that weren't coming to the fore in the leadership we're seeing at the city. So over the last decade, we've seen the crisis of homelessness get worse, and we've seen the city not be a partner in that. And so I think that's a way that I'd be different from previous leadership of making that a strong priority. But then there's other ways. She was a part of the 38 Thrive, part of planning, or a major part of planning the 38 Thrive program. And that's turning 38th Street back into the thriving Black cultural and business district that it was. So, this was never about anti-Andrea Jenkins. This was always about the kind of city that we need, the kind of place that we want to live in. There are ways that I will be similar to her, and there are ways that I'll be different.
What do you make of the dynamic at City Hall right now? I think you're making references to this on your website, but council members say the mayor doesn't include them in the process on big decisions, especially on things like George Floyd Square. Things come up for a vote after they're fully baked, then it's a showdown. Sometimes it ends with a veto, and a lot of the news coverage ends up being like, well, here goes the city council again, just blowing things up at the end, and we don't really get the story about how the process played out. So what's your impression of that dynamic? How do we fix that?
I mean, first things first, the status quo of Minneapolis politics is unacceptable. It's been this way for a long time. I don't think there's anyone who looks at the way that the council and the mayor are interacting, the way that city business is going about, and they're saying that's how it's supposed to be done. So I will be one of 13 people on the council, so it takes more than just me. But I think from me, a commitment to seeing the work get done, a commitment to being honest and straightforward with my coworkers, is the first way to start to get at this, toxic cycle in City Hall. But we can't change what the newspaper is going to report. The newspaper is biased. It has its own views. It has its own things that it wants to say. But what we can do is we can act in a way that is becoming of us. And so I will act in a way. I will speak plainly from the dais in a way that you just have to be mindful that any little clip can be clipped into a news article, and so you just have to be mindful of, don't be loose with your words. Don't give people who are looking for a way to trip you up a way to trip you up.
Oh, please be loose with your words, as loose as possible. I have video clips to post on social media of people being loose with their words. If you won't do that, what do I have?
Well, you just have your charming personality, John.
Okay. So some of the candidates I talked to are not willing to say that they won't be voting for Mayor Frey this year. And I wonder if you're someone who's willing to say where you stand on the mayor's race.
I am so excited about the opportunity to elect a mayor who is committed to the three things that I talked about and more, be it homelessness, be it public safety, be it all these things. The last decade of leadership has not gotten us there. And so, I'm not voting for Jacob Frey. He has failed on so many issues. But it's not about Jacob Frey. It's about the city that we want to see. It's about the kind of leadership that we need in order to get to the place that, we all agree on. A place where, seniors aren't being priced out by, rising taxes, where families who bought a starter home and now are looking to add a dog or add another kid, but the house is too small and buying a new one is going to be too expensive. These are the things that I'm focused on, and we have, the opportunity to elect a new mayor who is also going to be focused on those things.
So I was going through your website in preparation for this conversation, and I noticed you have a little line about potholes. And I challenged you on social media to post yourself standing in a man-sized pothole to prove your commitment to this issue. Will you post a photo of yourself standing in a man-sized pothole?
I can actually do you one better. I saw that, and I was going to post before this, but I ran out of time looking for it on my phone. I have a picture. There is a pothole. I think one of the utility companies just cut a giant hole into the road behind my house. Mm-hmm. And someone put a question 2 sign in it from 2021. So it says vote yes on question 2. And so there's just this giant square hole in the street with a question 2 sign in it. So check out the website, or not the website, but check out your replies for that picture.
That's not good enough, Soren Stevenson. You have to be in the hole.
I will think about it. That's
okay.
That, yeah.
Just don't get hurt, because I don't want to get blamed for encouraging you to do something dangerous.
The thing about this hole is that it's not necessarily so deep, it's that it's so wide. And there's no cones or anything around it. It's just a question 2 sign.
Okay, let's talk about George Floyd Square. Explain to someone who lives near George Floyd Square, who is frustrated and impatient. We're 5 years in. There's been a public process. They're eager for reconstruction. They potentially want reopening. That we should wait longer for this pedestrianization plan. The mayor, for instance, says the neighborhood doesn't want it. I feel like it's folly to say, well, I know what the neighborhood wants. Always in local politics, you have people claiming they know what the neighborhood wants. The neighborhood is divided, often is the case, and somebody has to make a decision. So, explain to that frustrated person why we should wait.
Explain to them, well,
why the mayor's plan that he's put forward for reopening shouldn't happen, why we should go forward with a council plan and a process to develop a pedestrianization.
Well, how about I say this instead? George Floyd Square, the place, it's not a political plaything. It's not something to be tossed around, fully reopened pedestrian. People live here. They have lives here. Some folks have businesses there. And so, frankly, I get a little tired with this fight in the newspaper and whatnot about what are we going to do with the street, this and that, when there's things we can do now to make the neighborhood better. We can have improvements on the lighting and crosswalks and signage. That doesn't need a street reconstruction or a pedestrian plaza in order to make improvements now. We have the plan for the People's Way coming up. I think there's some really good plans, and the city needs to push those forward. Because the vision of George Floyd Square that I have is one where you can go over to Bachota, you can get a cup of coffee, and then you can go and reflect in front of a permanent memorial, mourn, reflect, whatever, and you can be in this place, and you can be with community in this place. You can peruse, vibrant Black businesses, Black-owned businesses. These are things that we don't need to be fighting about some sort of street reconstruction at this time. What we need to be doing is focusing on how do we get this place to be an active place that is both a landmark about the life and legacy of George Floyd and the movement that came out of it, and also a neighborhood node. and a part of this 38th Street district that can and should be a thriving Black cultural district. There's things like Dreamland Cafe coming in a few blocks over. The city can and should be a part of filling these vacant storefronts, about making it easy, making it possible for Black-owned businesses to move into these empty storefronts or buy these buildings or whatnot. That's the vision for George Floyd Square that I have. Instead of getting caught up in this political fight where we're this, that, and the other thing, let's do things that we can just do. It doesn't take a huge, grand, comprehensive plan to make the square better today, and to make this square, 5-10 years out from now, make it a place that we can all be a part of, we can all appreciate as a place, as we continue this conversation about what's going to happen with the streets. The street reconstruction and the public works plan is not the most important thing about what happens at George Floyd Square. The most important thing about what happens at George Floyd Square is that we are honoring the legacy, and we're reflecting, and we are putting into practice the things that we know need to happen out of the murder of George Floyd, and that George Floyd Square is a place where neighbors can be and can get the things done, in their daily lives that they want and that they need. This is what's important.
So are you ready for me to quibble with language on your website? You ready for that?
A little bit, but I have an announcement, and that's that there's updates coming to the website within the next week or so. And so...
oh, really? Do we need to take screenshots?
Sure, you can take screenshots.
Everyone who's listening, Internet Archive, Soren Stevenson's website, so we can see all the ways he's hiding his real agenda. Is it going to be like substantive stuff?
Am I
taking away or just adding more and refining?
Is this Wedge Live, or am I on like Alpha News right now?
There's always a little Alpha News flavor to Wedge Live.
Okay. It's not, Wedge is the home of half of the conspiracy theories in Minneapolis, is what you're saying?
Yes. I'm saying Bob Kroll's wife is my boss. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So from your website, you say, this is on George Floyd Square, ensure that the property holding the Speedway People's Way is built according to community preference and remains in community control. And so I'm quibbling with the community preference part, because you've been around local politics long enough to know anyone who claims to know what the community preference is just, they're fooling you. They're trying to fool you, because there's always disagreement. Everyone can claim my side is the community preference. So like,
yeah.
How do you determine that? Is that a good standard to use? Like, maybe sometimes somebody has to show some leadership and say, well, there's disagreement here, but here's where I see the path through. Why are you trying to fool us with this community preference stuff?
Well, can I just say this about community preference?
Yeah.
I think everyone can agree that the status quo is not working. I think everyone can agree that letting it sit the way that it is and letting the square continue to be disinvested in is unacceptable. And so I think by doing something, particularly a bunch of these plans that have been presented so far are good plans. So by moving forward with these, we'll have to select one. By moving forward with that, I think that does, in fact, encompass community preference, because the community preference is that we do something to make the place better.
So you think we found the community preference? It's been found, and we just have to move forward?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So housing policy on the website, I feel you are certainly the candidate of zoning reform, and like you're speaking to all my preferences. You have will complement your issues page, very detailed, even before the website revamp. Got a lot of stuff on there for people to pick through and nitpick and complain about or very much enjoy. But let's get to the part where I'm like, oh no, maybe we shouldn't do this. But you've got a very strict rent stabilization policy, probably the same one you had last time. 3%, no exceptions, no exemption for new construction, vacancy control, and we've seen St. Paul move to potentially abandon their rent control policy. I'm just worried that all the things we're trying to do to make it possible to build more housing in the city could be canceled out if we implement this extremely strict version of rent stabilization. Are you worried about that? And what would you do to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah. Well, I can say I am worried about that. I mean, you can see that there's a whole page of things about how are we going to get more housing built in Minneapolis. I am not confused at all about the need to build more housing. And at the same time, we can all agree that there should be a limit on how much the rent can be raised on a renter. I am a renter. Some 20-ish% of Ward 8 is renters. And so we can agree that there needs to be some kind of rent stabilization, because a 50% increase on rent, which is legal at this point, is actually just an eviction. It's not a rent increase. I think the premise of rent stabilization is good. It is right. And Ward 8 voted in 2021 to see the City Council craft a rent stabilization policy. Now, on there, I have said for a long time that is where I want to begin negotiations. I want to work with other council members, with the mayor, with folks who are building in the city, in order to craft a proposal that works and that's going to work for homeowners, that's going to work for renters, and that's going to work for people building the missing middle housing that we need. But we have to start somewhere when it comes to negotiating. And for a long time in this city, the place we've been starting is, no, let's not do that at all. So yeah, I'm taking a stance of, hey, here's where I'm going to start, and then we can have a conversation. But yeah, I'm still committed to seeing building happening in the city.
Have you learned anything from St. Paul about the kind of policy you would want to see? Any pitfalls they fell into, or like what have we learned from St. Paul?
Yeah, I think one thing we've learned from St. Paul is there's a certain, like, the really wealthy investors, the private equity firms that are coming in, they're the ones who have the loudest sway at City Hall, just like at the state capitol, just like in the national capital. They're the ones who came in and said, oh, wait, let's not do this for buildings of a certain asset class. They really carved it out specifically so that, when it comes to affordable housing, we want to keep that excluded from this, because those are the places where they can make a lot of profit. They can buy the building and they can switch it up and raise the rents really quick and sell it for a lot of profit. And so I think we've seen, they passed the policy. They've seen things that worked and didn't work. But instead of addressing it in terms of like what's going to get more people in St. Paul building, more people in Minneapolis building, the kinds of places that we need, they've kind of fallen prey a little bit to, okay, well, the changes we're going to make are going to be for the wealthiest among us, as opposed to the most effective at building housing among us.
You know what's amazing to learn, Soren Stevenson? You will be voting on the next comprehensive plan in Minneapolis, most likely. We just finished the long, endless legal battle over the 2040 plan, and here we are electing council members who are going to play a key role in what happens with the next comp plan. So, yeah. 2050 plan, here we come. What are you excited about seeing in the city's next comprehensive plan, the 2050 plan?
Yeah, well, this is the place where folks should go to the website, because there's a lot on there that I don't think I have a bullet point that's like 2050 comprehensive plan, but when it comes to zoning reform, there's making neighborhood scale density happen, making gentle density happen. There's a lot of things that in the 2040 plan, we made a major step. And now, after all these years, we've seen like, okay, we made a major step, and there's some things we need to come behind and fix. We were the first ones to do something, and so there have been other cities, St. Paul, Portland, others, who have come behind us and had a little bit more comprehensive plan. And so we can learn from them. We can see what's worked there. And so I'm really excited about the 2050 comprehensive plan because we've learned a lot in the last decade. Minneapolis was a leader on it. We can continue to be a leader on it, but we need an update. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Did you just use the phrase more comprehensive plan? Is that allowed?
I did. I regretted it. But like you're on your talking points, right, as you said, and then sometimes something comes out of your mouth and you're like, dang, we got to take that.
Okay, we'll clip that.
Also, I learned from the last time I was on this, every time you say we're going to clip that, it doesn't get clipped.
It never gets clipped. Okay. No, we're not adding work. Not adding workload.
Can I ask you a question now, John?
Yeah, let's switch to the interview John Edwards section.
Yeah, perfect. That's what the people want. What's your vision for transportation in Minneapolis? What's your dream about what transportation in Minneapolis would look like?
I've got a very boring status quo, essentially status quo version of transportation. Because my theory is, because I lived through the bad days, the 2010s. I feel like we won so many battles and we haven't stopped to recognize how much we have won. Like getting Hennepin Avenue built in the state that it is, people are upset about the bus lanes not being full-time. I'm upset about the bus lanes not being full-time, but like the sort of the layout of the street is great. We won. We got the bike lane. We got the bus lanes. A future mayor could implement those bus lanes whatever hours they want, apparently. But long story short, like we won so many battles that a lot of the big fights have moved to the county. We're getting the county to build streets in a great way now. And we moved to the state level. Like MnDOT is a mess, and we got to reform the way they operate. But I'm just taking a moment to savor the battles we have won. And I think we've moved into a defensive posture here, trying to make sure the resentment doesn't build to the point where we elect some candidates who want to roll this stuff back, and make sure we just build vastly more parking than we need in the city. We stopped caring about. I went to an uptown crime meeting recently on Monday, and it was supposed to be about crime. You know what it was? It was a lady standing up to say no fucking bump outs. So that's an undercurrent, and that leads in to the next topic here. Did I answer your question adequately, Soren?
Yeah, that was a great answer.
So people think that the divide in the city is public safety, but I think it is also transportation. I don't know if this is true in Ward 8, because I find that Ward 8 is more open than most places to just better streets. But there's a divide on transportation too. Like I mentioned that meeting that I went to. It's like we were here to gripe about public safety and crime, and people just could not help but complain about medians and bump outs and bike lanes and bus lanes. What do you think is possible to achieve on transportation? I gave a very we won, let's declare victory kind of answer. What do you think is possible to make progress on? What do we need to make progress on?
That's a great question. I like that you're asking what's possible as opposed to kind of boring, what's your vision on transportation? I think one thing that hasn't really gotten the mention that it really deserves is that back in 2006, Minneapolis made a plan for a streetcar network. And then again in 2017, the city reaffirmed it and they said, okay, and this is the one we should start with. And the one we should start with is Nicollet. I live on Blaisdell, so it's one block over. That is something that's possible. We now have, we're going on our third decade of leadership that wants to see this happen. And it's going to take someone to actually push forward and make it happen. Most of the big transportation projects, the Green Line, the Blue Line, that was the city of Minneapolis and Hennepin County working together. And so, I think we have a huge opportunity to see a streetcar line on Nicollet, to see one on Chicago that was also called for, and to see one on 38th. See these things go in. I think these are possible. I think
I thought we abandoned the Nicollet streetcar though. Like I thought that was like officially no longer a priority, but I can't remember why I think that. Something that happened recently.
so. I'd be curious to know what makes you think that. Part of it was that the Kmart, they had to figure out what are we going to do with Kmart, because that's like the streetcar would have to go basically through what used to be Kmart. But now the Kmart's gone. We're rebuilding that street. We're rebuilding the bridge. And so now is potentially the first time it's been possible. And this gets into the whole Nicollet Mall and what we're going to do with Nicollet Mall. But yeah, a streetcar is something that we definitely can do. The city, they straightened the street out to make sure that the streetcar could go in. And so Nicollet is actually a more dangerous street today because it's straight and people drive really fast down it, because it was designed to have a streetcar be hosted on it. So yeah, I think that's something that's possible. I think it's possible for us to have a city where kids can walk to school. I'm lucky to live in Ward 8, where we have a lot of really active folks, and that means a lot of people who are active on safe routes to school, be it in the Bancroft neighborhood, in Lindale, at Field. But yeah, we can be a city where kids walk to school, where kids bike to school, and that's the norm and that's the expectation, as opposed to a city where parents have to wait in that drop-off line for hours. Hours over a week, but for so much time waiting in their car. We can be a city where kids get around and are safe to get around.
Everyone listening wants us to get into a debate over buses versus streetcars. I'm going to take the bus side and you're going to take the streetcar side, but we're not going to do it because that would take too long. But I'm just acknowledging listeners wanting us to get deeper into that. So this is a 2-hour podcast, but that's not going to happen.
I am going to disagree. I think actually no one wants us to get into that. And unless you're thinking of like two individuals, then we can all go out after this and have that. Okay. But no, I don't think anyone wants to hear that.
I just want to acknowledge to the people who are thinking that right now that I hear you, I'm in your mind, but we're not going to do it. So encampment sweeps, I was surprised talking to your opponent that he is critical of the city's encampment sweeps. I didn't think, because he's endorsed by all of Minneapolis, you think he'll take the mayor's side on that. He was critical of that. Makes me think like Ward 8 is just that progressive. But what do you tell someone, I've been asking this question a lot, what do you tell someone who lives near encampments where they're constantly shuffled around in their neighborhood? It's a constant presence. They feel like it's an emergency. The city needs to have a zero tolerance policy. Like maybe they're coming at it with compassion and they're like, of course we need to take care of people, but it also cannot be causing this issue for me and my family on a daily basis. I mean, what do you tell people who are just very concerned, and they're more concerned about, like, we need to have a zero tolerance policy for this? Like, what do you say?
Yeah. The city has a zero tolerance policy. Is it working? I don't think the status quo is working. We've told people where they can't stay, and we have not told people where they can stay. We have not provided the resources for people to get into housing. And so the result is we have encampments in neighborhoods. There are places in this city where encampments do not show up, or if they do show up, they get swept very quickly. Why is that not your neighborhood? This is the type of leadership that we've had over the last decade, where we have not decided to deal with the issue. We've instead decided to posture around the issue. And so, yeah, I'm critical of the way that the city has done its encampment sweeps, because we're not recognizing that there are people who sleep on the street. I see them every single day. I work with these people every single day. And what are we gonna do? We just have to be honest with ourselves. There are people sleeping outside. Where are they gonna go? By saying they can't be downtown, they can't be on MnDOT land, they can't be in parkland, and they mostly can't be in commercial districts, that leaves your neighborhood. That's the only other place that folks can exist. So, yeah, we need to get serious about the issue, and we need to say, you can be here, and then do what needs to be done in order to make that orderly, safe, convenient for workers trying to help folks, as opposed to, you can't be here, here, and here, and you also can't be there, but we're not going to sweep so fast if you go over there.
Right. So what you're saying is we've essentially sanctioned it happening in particular neighborhoods, unofficially sanctioned it. And I think what you're referring to is the Safe Outdoor Spaces Ordinance that the City Council has been kind of mulling over and making its way towards, right?
Yeah, so that's exactly what's happened. Is we've said that, in Whittier, in East Phillips, in Lindale for a certain time for the last year, those encampments, they're fine. We'll let them stay around long enough for it to become an issue. But no encampments are going to happen in Kenwood. They're not going to happen downtown, and they're not going to happen where people are exchanging money. And so this is what we have in the city. We've decided to favor a wealthy few over the livability of everyone. And I think the opposite. I think we should be talking about the livability of everyone. That being people who have encampments in their neighborhoods, or people who have had encampments in their neighborhoods, and people who are staying outside. And what are we going to do about getting them inside or getting them into a place where they can also be safe?
I was mentioning about the meeting I went to where it was a crime meeting. People were like, fund the police, as if they have not been funded, as if $50 million increase since 2022 didn't happen, as if they didn't get historic raises last year. And I wonder if it would be productive for candidates like you to say, once and for all, the police budget is massive, and council members, frankly, at these meetings, and sometimes they are this explicit. Police budget is massive, will remain so. Police staffing is on the way up for the foreseeable future. It's just like a fact of life. And so the real choice this year is how we build out the public safety ecosystem, the police alternatives, how much scrutiny are candidates and council members willing to apply to our historically very corrupt, brutal, unaccountable police department. You're welcome for how my voice has ended up here in the episode. But like, is that a message that you can deliver? Do you think that's the right way to frame this?
Yeah, I do. I was enjoying what you were saying. Yeah, I mean, we are spending a lot of money on the police department. And the question now needs to be not how much more money are we going to spend on the police department. The question needs to be, are we seeing the improvements in safety that we want to see? I think a lot of people would say, no, we're not seeing that. And so what are we going to do in the meantime, when you're talking about staffing? Yeah, police staff levels are going up. If you listen to any sort of politics or narrative coming from everywhere across the country, it is hard to hire more police officers. That's hard in New York City. It's hard in Florida. It's hard in Minneapolis. So what are we going to do in the meantime? My partner, she was mugged outside of her house last year, and she got a call from an investigator 9 months later asking, do you remember what they looked like? Do you remember what they were wearing? This is not an issue of, man, if we had more beat cops, she would have gotten a call a week later or a few days later. This is a matter of, we can have investigators who aren't necessarily peace officers. We can have response folks who can come at a quick time. With the BCR, the BCR needs to have the expectation of response times that are 2 to 3 minutes as opposed to 45 minutes. These are the things we need to be working on, building out these alternatives that are going to keep us safe and that are going to free up officers to do the things that they need to do. We can have a city where people feel safe to walk their dog at night. Everyone feels safe to walk their dog at night. We just have been myopically focused on on police numbers as opposed to myopically focused on, do we feel safe?
Here we are at the end, and I'm going to do quick questions. These are quick answer questions, and if you fail to answer quickly, I am going to unleash my Lisa Goodman sound effects. Let me see if I can.
And I feel like everyone's time is being taken up, including all of the people in the audience.
So be quick, Soren Stevenson, with these questions.
Okay, I'll try.
These are the rules. Is there capacity in the budget to increase neighborhood funding? Are you pledging to do so?
Probably.
Oh, probably. That's a very nuanced answer. That's a nuanced, quick answer. Probably. Labor Standards Board. Jenkins voted to sustain the mayor's veto after voting for it, so she took both sides of that one. Do you support it?
Yes.
And is there a council member where you think, wow, I really like the way they do things? Do you have a crush on a particular council member?
I'm not going to say I have a crush on someone that I want.
Make it romantic. Just make it romantic.
I'm not trying to get called into HR. But yeah, I sometimes see council members talk or hear from them directly and go, I really like what you're doing there.
Who? Who is it?
Oh, you didn't ask who. You just said, is there?
That it's implied. No, you're nitpicking here.
Well, maybe you should play the sound. Everyone's time is being wasted.
No, you're answering the question.
Okay, well, I really like Jeremiah Ellison. I really like what he does. I like what he says. I like the leader that he's been. Yeah, he's been great for the city, and I'm sad to see him go.
That is also my answer. I always think to myself, if I needed a lawyer, people make a big deal about the other Ellison, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General. Mm-hmm. I feel like if I needed a lawyer, you know who I would want arguing my case? Jeremiah Ellison.
Many times on the podcast, Jeremiah Ellison.
Loyal listener, for you to recognize my cliche there, my talking point.
You know, actually from an episode a couple of episodes ago, you said no candidates are going to be watching this, and then you said something word date specific, and I just can't remember what it was, but I heard it, and I was like, I'm going to reference that, but here we are.
Well, I already asked you about Mayor Fry. You're not supporting Mayor Fry, so we're here. We're at the end, and we need. Is there anything we haven't talked about, Soren?
I mean, there's tons of things we haven't talked about. I won't bore the listeners with more policy and whatnot, but basically, you know, we know where we want to be as a city. We know that we can and should have a vibrant city where people feel safe, where people have places to live, where your neighborhood is interesting, and where rents aren't constantly rising and home prices aren't constantly rising. We can have that city. We know we can be a city that is resilient in the face of climate change, is being responsible in the face of climate change. And I'm ready to get down to work. I'm ready to do it.
Okay, if you are ready to get down to work, caucuses are April 8th, 2025. It's coming up soon. Everyone caucus, become a delegate. But we're not done yet. Soren Stevenson, give me some recommendations. What are you enjoying? How are you passing the time? What can you recommend to people?
You know, funny story, when I was on the first time, of course I had listened, and so I knew that was going to be asked, but then I prepared nothing. Mm-hmm. And then, like, every time I listened to one of your episodes since then, I thought, damn, I really missed my chance on my time on Wedge Live. So this time I do have something. I have two things, actually. One, I don't know if you can see right here, these are fruit trees. This one is a mame, and this one is a longan.
You have fruit trees in your apartment?
Yeah, right there. Those are two of them. Two of many. I love eating a fruit and then just sticking the seed in the ground, in a pot, and seeing what'll happen. And what happens is you'll grow all kinds of trees. So I have all kinds of trees from things that I have eaten and then just stuck it in the ground to see what would happen.
Where'd you get the seed from? Like a grocery store, like produce from the grocery store?
Yeah, like this was probably like an avocado from, oh no, this is a jackfruit tree. This is an avocado. So these two things were from the Hmong market in St. Paul. Mm-hmm. This was from, I got a gift. Somebody sent me a box of, not somebody, my partner, bought me a box of like exotic fruits, and then this is a mame, and then this is an avocado, probably from Cub or something. You know, you just stick it in the ground, see what happens.
I thought that our corporate overlords modified seeds so that we could never get actual plants out of the seeds. Is that not true?
The issue is that most seeds are not. I just bored. I was at this Kingfield event where they tap the trees in Kingfield and then they make syrup out of it and then they have a pancake breakfast. So anyways, at this event they also had the arborists from the Parks Department were there, and I bored this one arborist for like 15 minutes on questions on grocery store fruit trees. And the thing is that most fruit trees, what they do is they take a rootstock from one type of tree that's really disease resistant or cold hardy or something, and then they graft on a tree that has a really good fruit. And so the fruit that you grow, like this seed, will not produce an avocado that was like, the perfect grocery store avocado. It'll probably produce a terrible avocado, but because it's got the really great roots as opposed to the really great fruit. And so, yeah, if you go farther than me in this hobby, you will be taking a tree about this size and then grafting on a longan fruit variety that is a really good fruit variety as opposed to a really good rootstock.
Well, the future of agriculture, I've always said, is growing terrible fruit trees inside your apartment, right?
It could be the future of agriculture, or it could also just be a way to like relieve stress in your life. There's that.
I mean, it's a plant. It's a house plant. You don't need fruit from it.
No. And this tree in particular is really gorgeous, and so you'll just be surprised. Some of these trees are really amazing.
That's the most interesting, potentially the most interesting recommendation anyone's ever made. I don't think anyone's going to follow through and join you in this hobby, but it was interesting.
I think there will be one person who also does this or has been thinking about doing this. And to that person, I say, please be a volunteer at the caucus and door knocking so that we can take this all the way to City Hall.
That's the kind of single-minded, obsessive council member you would potentially be getting in Ward 8. The kind of person who just grows fruit trees in their apartment from grocery store fruits.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, thank you, Soren Stevenson, City Council candidate in Ward 8 here in Minneapolis. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.